Yeah.
Good people, welcome to the Prodigious Leadership Podcast. This is a long overdue episode that I'm really excited about. It's so good to have my sister on today. How are you, NobuLali? Pleasure to have you on the podcast. Are you well?
I am well. Let me just take out my card here. New job. This was on the 1st of February last year when I started working at GIBS. Always reminds me, Uguti, it's important how you start, and also like how blessed I am to do the stuff that I do for a living.
Oh, wow. I love how you started off the statement by saying it's important to recognize how you start. Please expand a little bit on that statement.
So I've always been a self-starter. And I won the SAP Kickstart competition. So starting, Jenna, has been a part of my narrative. I think starting is something that is sometimes difficult because you can overthink what the journey will look like. And it's important at times to just start, whether it's imperfect or uncertain or unclear. Once you start, at least you can build the momentum and improve as you go along. So one thing that I used to struggle with is having these ambitious goals and these amazing ideas. But because being sabukala, I'd always just like procrastinate. But I soon realized, which, you know what, a minimum viable product is better than an idea. And somebody that started and then stopped along the way is better than someone that didn't start at all. But it's always better to finish. I was listening to a podcast, Yakonono Sipo, who was talking about the importance of finishing, which was quite beautiful. So I think that's why starting is important, because everything that people have done, it's because they chose to start.
Wow. So I can't finish without starting. And would you say that starting does require a measure of faith?
Faith and work as well, because you need to believe that the idea is something that can certainly happen, but also that you're well equipped for the job. And if you're not, you learn along the way.
But you should also be willing to learn. So what would you say to a leader who struggles with starting, somebody who's very in tune with how perfect they believe things should be before they put it out into the world or before they establish something? I mean, there are leaders who do struggle with just having perfectionism and with just ensuring that everything is to the T before they start it. So what would you say to someone who finds themselves in that position?
So I would say look at some of the best brands that you really like and look at how it is that they were before they were the brands that they are. So if you look at like a Volkswagen, for example, and you look at how the Beetle is versus maybe the latest model that they have now, you'll realize that they also had to start somewhere and it wasn't super amazing or super great. Marok Salayo, they started. Henry Ford, when he started building automotives, everybody was so against what it is that he was doing. They said, why do you need to replace a horse? And they were just soothsayers. Maramboneni Manje, he's an individual that we're all grateful for, not just for the invention of the automotive, but his entrepreneurial narrative, his tenacity and things like that. So I would say that striving for excellence is important, but perfection is not important. Progress is better than perfection. And that's something I learned this year, which is 2022. And it took me almost like the first, I'd say maybe quarter of my life to learn that. And it's really liberated me and enabled me to do a lot more than what I used to before, because so and to answer your second question, yes, it does require faith, because sometimes you start things and you're not sure where it's going to go. When I first started my first business, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what it would lead to. And within 12 months of running a business, I won a national competition, which is a bit crazy. And if they had said, oh, if you start this business, you could win a competition, I most probably wouldn't have started it, because it wasn't about the accolades. It was about the vision.
Wow. But then that requires a posture and a mindset, because we have quite a number of people, particularly in the culture that we live in today, that's so accolade driven. And, you know, people esteem accolades over purpose. So how do we deal with that? And how does one get so rooted in what they're building and the vision of what they're building that they don't allow the accolades, the applause, quote unquote, influence to get into the way of their clarity when it comes to building their vision?
I think you know, a lot of people speak about how failure can lead to leaders not succeeding in what they want to do, because it's the opposite of success, right? And some people think that the reason why certain people don't strive for certain things is because basabuguti, they're not going to succeed. But there's a lot of literature that shows that some people have a bigger fear for success than they do the fear of failing, because failure is expensive, but success is expensive as well. People think, Uguti, it's only when you failed in something that you lose a lot, but there's a lot of losses that come with success as well. So for me, I'd say that it's understanding how fear and failure are actually complementary to each other, and can both and how it can actually propel you, rather than focusing on how limiting your failure might be or crippling the success might be. It's about how do you make sure with what you do allows you to propel regardless of which side of the coin it is.
I love that. You said something about the losses of success. Do you think that oftentimes when we want to pursue a sense of success or significance, we don't think about what we need to lay aside to achieve or obtain?
Certainly. There's so much that you need to ensure that you let go of when it comes to what you want to attain. And let me explain, like, for you to succeed in something, you need to make a sacrifice. There's always a choice that you're making and something that you're leaving by taking something else. And it's the antithesis of success, it's the antithesis of success. The sacrifice means, Wuti, there's a whole bunch of things that you're not going to gain because in this moment you're choosing to get something else. It's almost like a bunch of grapes, Letawa. You know, when you're eating a bunch of grapes, there's one grape that you're going to take in that moment and eat. But there's a bunch that you need to leave behind for you to be able to eat and fully savor this one. And sometimes when you come back to the bunch of grapes, they've been fermented into something else. Some of them have lost their sweetness. Some of them have been taken by somebody else. And when you did really enjoy this one, and it was your goal to attain this one, but it means that there were some other things that you had to forgo. So what I find when it comes to the loss of success is I have in the past overestimated the importance of success without fully appreciating what I'm going to lose in the process. And now that I know that success comes at a cost, I'm not like disillusioned about what decision I'm making when I choose to set a goal, number one, or when I choose to strive towards something that's going to change my life for the better, financially or emotionally, spiritually or mentally, or even physically. But I also take into account that those losses will mean that I grieve them, but I try now not to overestimate the power of success, but also to appreciate the loss that comes with it. Sounds a bit morbid because every motivational speaker tells you about why success is important, but success is very expensive as well.
I love also how you said it comes at a price. Just thinking about the many hats that you wear, from entrepreneurship to film and TV production to academia. I mean, what would you say to a leader who's struggling with breaking out from where they've been in, or how people have categorized them, or the category in which people have just boxed them in? What would you say to someone who's struggling to break out and just become the fullness of who they've been created to be in different avenues, in different components?
So firstly, I'd say most probably those people don't exist. It's a figment of your imagination, or it's a limitation that you're placing upon yourself based on what you think they are thinking about you. A lot of us are so worried about what other people are thinking that we don't think about other people. So it means nobody's thinking about somebody else. So yeah, and even when they do, who are they to determine what it is that you can and cannot do, or the mold that you need to fit into? So two things that I would say to them is do things in secrecy, one. And then also the second thing is do things regardless of, change the posture of where you are at. So do things in secrecy. I pursued a PhD in the UK in strategy, with everybody knowing me as an actress, me having won awards as a theater producer, and me being like an individual that if I wanted to, could have really pursued just an acting career and done exceptionally well. Why did I leave the country and why did I keep it quiet? I left the country because I knew that in exile, nobody talks to you about how home is. Nobody talks to you about how comfortable certain things are. No auntie or uncle invites you to things because they understand that you're a soldier that's going out to actually win a certain war, or you're a mission that's gone to achieve something. So for me, I needed to move away from a place of comfort and a place of being known to create a new name for myself, but also to leave the accolades behind and leave my failures behind, so that when I get to the UK, I can actually say, when it comes to the UK, I don't know anybody, I don't know anything, I don't even know how to differentiate between a pound and a euro, a story for another day. And I'm starting from scratch. I remember crying in one of the aisles because I didn't know where do you find eggs and sugar. Like eggs, okay, they must be somewhere cold because they are refrigerated, but you bake with them. And then sugar goes into confectionery. So it could be with the jam, it could be with the tea, it could be with the baking stuff. And I wasn't finding it in all different sections. And I was like, how can I be an adult that doesn't know where sugar is? But it's like, yeah, you're an adult in South Africa, but in the UK, you might as well be a teenager because you're learning everything anew. And what that meant is that I could almost be like an artist with a new canvas and some paint. I could start from scratch and build my own masterpiece with my own references from where I am, as opposed to where I come from as the primary launch pad. So what that meant is there was nobody limiting me. There was nobody holding me ransom to the identity of who I was. And there was every opportunity to actually hold up everything that I've been, put it up against, like a light and say, does this still serve me? No, let me throw that out. Okay, does this still serve me? Yes, actually, this is very core to my identity. Let me keep that. And by the end of my PhD, I was able to say, now I know who I am according to myself and according to God. But now I can also say to others, hi, my name is NobuLali. I left as a caterpillar. I'm coming back as a butterfly. Let me introduce myself. So that's the one piece. Then the second piece about abantu bazotini and how to move from where you are when you're surrounded by doubts and these self-limiting thoughts, and maybe even soothsayers in your environment, is to say, like, again, people will always say something, and people's opinion, especially when they haven't done what it is that you want to do, will always default to the negative, because we are by nature ones that avoid any form of like having to, we do fight or flight, right? And people that ask for advice would be people that want to take care of you, people want to protect you, people that want to make sure whatever you're doing succeeds. And what's their default? No, ungalimali or expose you to failure. So, there was this quote, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it goes something like, don't ask for directions from people that haven't walked the road that you intend to walk. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that people can't advise you if they haven't done it, but sometimes they don't actually have the vocabulary for what you are asking about. They don't have the concept of what you're asking about, but also they don't have the impartation that has been given sometimes solely to you to do what you've been asked to do. Because there's certain things that are whispered to you by the Holy Spirit. There's certain things that are whispered to you by God. There's certain gifts that are given solely to you. And if you ask someone else about them, they would think, oh, actually, if it was me, this is what I do, but it's not you, it's me. So for me, I'm like, Yazini, I've gotten to the point where I've got 4 people that I'd seek advice from. And if they do align or misalign with what I'm saying, it's still fine. I'll still do it anyway, because I'd rather try something and fail at it, knowing that I was being obedient, than not to try because
I'd rather do something, fail at it with the knowledge that I was obedient, rather than not try because of the opinions of other people. Wow, that can close the interview.
All right, to speak lovely, guys, don't forget to click like down below.
I can close it, because now, and I'll tell you why, you've put the measure of success or the success, the outcome, on the obedience to your cause. rather than what people have to say about it. And that's
Yeah.
hard.
And that's where grace is important. That's where grace is important. I've got so many things that I'll say pregnant with as a metaphor, because I know that I need to go into labor with them. Mara uguti, how I'm gonna do it, where I'm gonna do it, whom I'm gonna do it with. Yo wanna pambili.
I love it. So and to put someone in perspective who says, okay, she says that's where grace comes in, but practically how, how would you say grace has worked for you? I'd like to think grace is a difference maker. It's that part where we can't reach. It's exactly.
Yeah.
It's that part that we can't reach. It's that step that we can no longer take. It's that enablement, but the enablement of it is so divine to the point where we can't even take the credit for it.
So for me, I think how it works, what I like is like, it's the next step that you cannot reach. That means the steps that you've been taking.
Ooh,
and grace has always been
you really
with
want
you.
us to close this interview, like
people are going to be watching and listening and being like, Letabo, can you just be patient? But grace is that thing that it feels like it's following you, because when you're walking, you constantly, ego kicks in, right? And you think, I am walking this journey. But I always find that grace meets me already at my point of need. It's already been there. It's like mabathi indlela ibuzwa kwaphambili, mina ngibuza uGrace ukuthi Grace kunjani lapho, kuyenzakalani ngaphambili, because I feel ukuthi in everything that I've done, I honestly, Letabo, sometimes only know as far as my nose is ukuthi what I'm gonna do. And then there's this thing where, like, as I'm taking the step, the next one comes. As I'm taking the next step, the next one comes. And then when I look back, I'm like, I can't believe this is how far I've walked. And I think it's humbling to experience life like that. But also it's important to experience life like that, because when I look back at the road behind me, I sometimes am in awe of what I've done. And if I had known how rough the road would be when I started, I wouldn't have started. So how does that work practically? It means you arrive in the UK with 32 kilograms, having just come off a flight. You arrive at Warwick University and you're there to do a PhD. You've got a scholarship for 4 years. You've got a topic that you understand. You've got friends and family that are supporting you. And in 4 years, you're going to go back to South Africa being Dr. Dangazele. Then in the 4th year, with 3 months to go, not even months, I think it was August 2018, you realize that you've only got 1 chapter of the thesis. And it needs to be a minimum of 3 chapters to be a thesis. But when are you trying to go for 6? Now you had 3 years and a couple of months to do this, and you were only able to do a chapter like as an output. You did other things, obviously. Then you apply for an extension and they say no, rather pause your PhD, go home, figure out how you're going to do this, because September. So why don't you just go back? And you stop and you think, going back means I'd have to get a new visa. I'd need to save up again. I'd need to prove that I can finance myself. I'd need to do all these things. And I lose all access to like supervisors and things like that. Then Grace steps in and says, don't take the extension, continue, I will provide. Then you do. You continue and you get that letter that says you have not received the extension. And then because you've been faithful and obedient, someone hears about your extension that's been denied and goes and doesn't speak to the person that denied you your extension, doesn't speak to your supervisor, doesn't speak to the head of department. They go straight to the lead faculty in your entire, like the social sciences, and says, ngicela ukukhulumela ingane enguNobuLali exakekile lana. Ngicela nimbonise umusa, grace, and allow her to continue. I think she needs another 6 months. And then you get an email saying your extension has been granted. Ukuthi kanjani, nini, and stuff like that. At that point, you don't know why, because I was like, I'm not going to default. I'm not going to say, you know what, I can't do this, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And then Nkulunkulu raises people and says, actually, we've watched her. We know why she's actually been delayed. There's nothing I could have done to expedite my PhD process. But Grace then came in and said, I'm going to provide the time, but also I'm going to bring somebody into your life that's going to enable you to actually understand what your thesis is about. And in the space of 6 months, not only did I finish the PhD, but I was also able to write an amazing thesis, do my viva, get somebody that specializes in my topic, who I met at a conference that was at my university that year, to sit with me for about 12 hours and help me figure out which chapters to keep and which chapters to let go of. How? This person lives in America. Why did they come to the UK that year? Why did they come to this conference? Why did I go to their session? Why did I mention them when I was speaking? And why did he say, if you ever need anything, let me know? And then in that moment, during a coffee break, I was like, actually, this is the 411. And he said, after my day ends at 4, from 4 until tomorrow morning, my time is all yours. And then a family friend cooks dinner for them, brings it over because he had visited South Africa, loves Zipapa. So yeah, now he's helping me cook my PhD, whilst a South African that was best friends with my aunt cooks for him, brings us the food. He's in tears because he's so happy. I'm in tears because I'm going to get a PhD. I wouldn't have planned that. I didn't know waking up that number 1, this person was going to do that. Number 2, these people were going to cook for me. But number 3, he's going to sit and like, just be like, okay, break it down. Just talk to me. Tell me what you want to write for this thesis. Okay, that links to this theory. This links to that theory. Here's my book on this. Here's my article on this. That's grace. I could have just given up and gone home like they had said, but I chose to say, you know what, so I'm not going to see myself to finish. Like, take over, Lord.
Wow, I love that. What an amazing story. So authentic. And I love how you literally put us in position to what was going on at the time. Also, I like to I like to think as grace. I like to think of grace as abounding provision. It's that provision that we need, that we can't take care of by ourselves. You know, as a leader, how would you like to think as a leader you've been graced, particularly where your personal characteristics are concerned? How would you think you have been graced?
So I feel the biggest grace that I was granted is being birthed by my mother. This is the Wusi dress. It's an urban Zulu dress, and it's the Wusi dress. And I wore it to pay homage to my mom. And I didn't know you'd ask this question, but the fact that I was raised in a Christian home by a Christian mom who was entrepreneurial in herself, who valued education, who was an advocate for diversity and also creativity, I think is the winning formula or the winning secret that I came into this earth with. You know, some people come into the earth with an inheritance. Some people come into the earth with a title. I came into the earth with a mother that had such a strong purpose for the fruit of her womb that she laid down her life so that we could flourish. And this has been my secret superpower, because I have a sense of humor like my mom's. I have a smile like my mom's. I have tenacity like my mom, but I have drive like my mom as well. And recently I was told that you know, bubele like umamami as well. And I think I've got that sense of izandla zami ziyakhona, nengqondo yami has the ability to actually think of something. Because when I finished my undergrad, my mom was like, you know, I really think you should do your master's because it's going to get tougher and you're going to have so many other things that compete with your time if you wait. And I was like, okay, cool. And at the time when she was saying that, my head of department was asking me if I want to do my master's as well. So that was like then something that happened. But then when I finished my master's, my mom was like, don't you want to just do the PhD? And at the time I said, I'm not ready to do the PhD yet. Then she said, why don't you start a business? Do you understand, Uti? Just like grace constantly moves ahead of me. My mom was always like a year or two ahead of my curve when it comes to my personal strategy and my personal development. And she'd constantly think, okay, NobuLali Segalana, I think maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, I'd like for her to be here. So she'd start planting ideas in my head, but also exposing me to the people that can get me to where I want to. So I think that the biggest influence, the biggest strategist, the biggest contributor to who I am, what I do, the way I live my life, even though she's passed away and it's 10 years since she passed on now, her voice is still as strong in my life as if like no something you must hi girl, and I'm like, wait a minute, you know, or like sometimes I'm shyly zandla because of what it is that I'm doing. But also she still reprimands me, guys. I'm so mature now. My mom has passed away, but she still reprimands me. because I know how strong her voice was in my life as an affirming force, as a force of direction, as a prayer warrior for my life, that I can't actually forget its sound. So now I try to make sure in everything that I do, I take that into cognizance. And because it was principles, a purpose, and an approach based on my core values, even if her voice fades away in time, I would have developed my own voice, and it would be strong enough to actually purport or perpetuate the very purpose that she instilled in me whilst I was in her womb.
Wow. I'm sure there's someone who's watching who can relate when you say you still hear her voice today, guiding you, cheering you on, and interceding for you, you know. Any last words for our community?
I'd say maybe my last words would be, number one, there's no big purpose, there's no big bang, there's no big aha moment. My purpose has been discovered through taking one step that is uncertain and then another step that is uncertain. So don't look at the big picture. I know that we all think of this big picture and this big vision. Just think, okay, kona manje, it's X date, where would I like to be better, kusasa, than where I am today? Do an audit of what you've done today and how you'd like to improve that tomorrow. And this is taken from a book titled The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, that says it's the incremental changes to your life that actually make the biggest impact than these big, I'm going to do X type things. So start small and do not underestimate the start of small beginnings. I'm paraphrasing horribly. You can help me there. So that's the one thing. Like, start small, even if it's like a shop or something. Start noting is keep. I'm in the UK and I smuggled in keep.
I saw you posting that. I was like, yo, let me keep quiet.
There's someone out there that doesn't know that they are an international shop. This is an international brand because someone sold something and it's exported. And I've got about 10 packets that I'm going to send to my peeps here in the UK. Hey, shame, nostalgia. So that's the one thing, start small. The second thing is read constantly and consistently. I read a lot, whether it's an audible book, like when I mentioned, there's a book over here, I was recommending one. This is just like a taster of my books. I've got books that are back in South Africa, books in that room, and I've got a walk-in library in that direction. Read, because Julia most probably took 4 years to get this book published, if not 2 to 3, but it's of her life experience as a psychologist, and looking at different stories and vignettes of people overcoming circumstances that seemed impossible. Why wouldn't you want the cheat sheet? It's a book, it's a cheat sheet. Use it. There's nothing new under the sun. A lot of books have been written out there, and if you really want to expedite the process of what you do, read, because they say a PhD propels you about 10 years ahead of where you would be career-wise. A book does the same, about 2 to 3 years of that specific area that you want to learn about. Novels are different, but I think books that are based on true stories do that. And then lastly, expose yourself to new things. Can you pause the recording? My delivery is coming. Can you pause? I know we've got 4 minutes. So the reason why I say you must expose yourself to new things is because it's in the new things that you find out what old things no longer serve you, but also it's in the new things that you discover what it is that you're really good at, what it is that you maybe aren't good at, and where the next opportunity might come from. So whilst I have, I think, studied up to a certain level, I'm sitting now and thinking, Yazin, a degree and I'm thinking,